Well, Vladimir Putin has issued some words regarding the Ukraine situation, and it doesn't have people hopeful for how this thing is going to end up. Joining us now is CBN International Correspondent George Thomas. George, what's your reaction, and what did Putin say, first of all, and what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway for me is two things. One, he seemed very angry. He just seemed really upset about upset with the United States, with NATO, and also, in his opening statements, he in essence dismissed Ukraine as a sovereign, independent country. He basically said that Ukraine, you were always part of us until folks like Lenin and Stalin decided to make some agreements that weren't in the best interest of the Soviet Union, of the USSR empire. Last July, Putin wrote a 7,000-word essay and delivered it, made sure that every single member of the Russian military got a copy of this essay. And the basic essence of the essay, the thesis, was that Ukraine has always been part of Russia, and that Kyiv, the Russians like to say this, is the mother of all Russian cities. And so from his reading of history, it's that Ukraine is part of Russia, that Russia and Ukraine are one, that its people are one, that the language is one. And you saw that today. He was giving us a lesson about the greatness of the Soviet Union and the various things that it used to do and accomplish. And then came along leaders like Lenin and Stalin who had a different vision and decided to, break the Soviet Union apart. Really, at the end of the day, Mikhail Gorbachev did that. But it was Vladimir Putin who, after all, said that one of the greatest catastrophes in geopolitics of the 20th century was the breakup of the Soviet Union. And you saw today clearly that that really is course it in so many ways courses through his veins, and I don't know if it's because of his age that he's looking for legacy. And I think he's 69 years old, and is he going to be seen as the man who reconstitutes the former Soviet Union? I don't know, but look, I think by today's declaration declaring these two provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent sovereign states. Look, he already controlled them for the last 8 years. He had his men, his soldiers in there. Obviously, they weren't wearing the Russian military uniform, but this, in essence, is officially makes that legitimate in his eyes. But keep in mind, he has, in essence, declared about 13 to 15% of Ukrainian territory now belongs to Russia. That's what he did tonight. And that's stunning. And you could tell that it was not just about Eastern Ukraine, because if it was just about Eastern Ukraine, you would have seen the bulk of his soldiers, of his 150 to 190,000 soldiers, part of the country. And that too, why have that many troops? The reality is that this is more than just Eastern Ukraine. And my sense is that if he were to launch an invasion, that it would begin in the Donbass, in the Donetsk, in the Luhansk region, and then move westward, perhaps to the Dnipro River, and kind of, if you were to split Ukraine in half, because you have to look at it also geographically and ethnically, the eastern part of Ukraine, you find a majority of Russian-speaking people, and they have historically been closer to Russia and Russia sentiments, and the ties a lot closer. The western part of Ukraine is more Ukrainian-speaking people, and they have historically been aligned with the West. But what is interesting is that since Putin's invasion of eastern Ukraine in 2014, the sentiment on the ground in eastern Ukraine is turning against Putin. In fact, a new survey that just came out this week showed that 65% of Ukrainians want to join NATO. A very high percentage also want to join the European Union. So the tide is against him. He clearly sees that, and he sees this might be the opportunity to strike before Ukraine goes more pro-Western than it is today.
And George, one of the things that I want to ask, because so often we hear these situations, and I hear the details you're describing, and it's so abstract to so many people. I've been so moved by some of the videos that you've shot of Christians gathering and praying and dealing with this situation by taking it to the Lord. I want to know what's been the response you've heard from Christians, fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, as they're just dealing with such a fluid and constantly changing situation there on the ground in Ukraine.
Yeah, as a Christian reminded me today, who lives in the eastern part of the country, he said, and he in fact echoed what President Zelensky said at the Munich summit this past Saturday. He said, "You want to know why they should concern, or why Americans should be concerned about what's happening in my country?" He said, for the last 8 years, Ukraine has in essence been a shield for the rest of Europe against one of the world's biggest armies. He said, Ukraine, tiny Ukraine, I mean, obviously it's the largest European country outside of Russia. He said, but our small army has managed to keep at bay the mighty forces of Russia against the European Union, against Europe. And he said to me, he says, look, if Ukraine goes and Russia invades and takes the entire country of Ukraine, Russia will be on the doorstep of Poland, of Hungary, of Romania, of Estonia, of Latvia, of France, of England, of Germany. You look at the map, right? So he says, do you want Russian forces to go all the way to the Polish border? He says, this is what is at stake. And secondly, he said, what is at stake is freedom. And he reminded me, he said, you in America, you love freedom, you love your democracy, you love your ability to say what you want, when you want to say it, how you say it. He said, this is what we want as well. And you have a thriving democracy in the heart of Europe that is today facing this giant of communism led by Vladimir Putin. Isn't that of essence to you? And as he said today, this is about a battle for freedom, the freedom for the heart and soul of Ukraine.
Powerful stuff there, George. And man, when you look at some of your report here, actually, that you filed just a little bit ago earlier today, talking about these evacuations, and then also we're hearing about men being told to arm up, and that, citizens are arming themselves. What have you heard on that front, and how much of that's true, and what is the average citizen doing to prepare for this?
Yeah, I can tell you, speaking this weekend with 3 of my contacts who live in the Russian-controlled territories, I had to get information to them in a number of different ways. I can't explain how, but everything is monitored by the Russian intelligence. These 3 individuals are part of the underground church in the separatist-controlled territories. And he said, "Look, we got the order this weekend that women, children, and the elderly need to leave, evacuate." In fact, one of my sources said he was just walking down the street in his city, and there was a car that was going by with a loudspeaker and saying that all men between the ages of 18 and 60, you need to stay in the city, and you need to take up arms. If you have gotten training in the past, you need to come and join the front lines because there is going to be an imminent Ukrainian attack. That has been the messaging from Moscow this entire time, that Ukraine is preparing for a war against the East, which is absolutely ridiculous, because in 8 years, when you didn't have 200,000 forces massed on the border, Ukraine could have gone into the Donbas region. Why would they, when they are completely surrounded, decide to go and take Crimea? In fact, that's what Putin said today, that Ukraine was getting ready to advance on Crimea, advance on the eastern part of the country. That's just ridiculous. But they are in a difficult situation. And in fact, one of my sources said, look, what is happening today in the Russian territories to Christians and how we have to live. I want to warn my Ukrainian brothers and sisters, if Russia takes over our country, Christians will be forced underground.
All right, George Thomas, thank you so much for this information here today. George, live from Ukraine. Anything else you want to leave our viewers with here now, while this is the latest situation we've got from you?
Yeah.
On the situation there? What can we expect to be happening here in the coming hours and days?
I think two things could potentially happen here as a result of this announcement by Putin. One, that the leaders of these two provinces will officially invite the Russian military into their territory, and Putin might decide just to park and wait to see how Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, responds. If he responds with force, then he has his reason for going in for a full invasion. Or he could walk right in and not just take eastern part of Ukraine, but go all the way to Kyiv, and that is going to be a bloodbath. It really is. So my word of encouragement to everybody is pray, and that is what I've heard from the folks I've been talking to. That prayer is what they want. They want prayer for peace. That the efforts of the enemy, they don't necessarily say Russia, but just the spiritual enemies that are hovering over this nation and that are battling for the soul of this nation, would be held at bay. And that at the end of the day, peace would reign over Ukraine. But it's not looking good. But these believers are standing, hoping and believing, and are urging people around the world to pray for them.
All right, George Thomas, live from Ukraine. George, thanks so much for the information, and we continue to pray for you and stay safe over there. We really appreciate all these reports.
Thanks. You're most welcome.